The council chamber floated in the darkness of space like a giant silver wheel. Inside, representatives from 40 different alien species sat in their designated seats watching the holographic display at the center of the room. The display showed a fleet of warships, so many that they looked like a swarm of angry insects. 10,000 vessels, all bearing the red and black colors of the Xalthari Empire. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood at the human podium, her hands clasped behind her back. She was a small woman by human standards, barely 5.5 feet tall with gray streaks in her black hair. She wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Around her, the other ambassadors whispered and clicked and hummed in their various languages. Overlord Kreshitar rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, with dark red skin covered in armored plates. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of dominance. When he spoke, his voice boomed through the translation system. "The Xalthari Empire has been patient with the humans," he said. "We have tolerated their presence in our region of space. We have overlooked their refusal to pay the proper tributes. But now they have established colonies and systems we claim as our own. This cannot stand." He pointed one clawed finger at Ambassador Chen. "We demand the immediate evacuation of all human settlements in the outer reach. You have 30 standard days to comply. If you refuse, our fleet will remove you by force." The chamber erupted in noise. Some species clicked their approval, others buzzed with concern. A few remained silent, watching carefully. Ambassador Chen waited for the noise to fade. Then she smiled. It was a small smile, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "The United Nations Space Command has received your ultimatum," she said calmly. "We reject it. Those colonies are legally established on unclaimed worlds. We will not abandon our people." Kreshtar's eyes narrowed. "Then you choose war. Your entire fleet could not stand against even 1/10 of our forces. We have counted your ships, human. You have perhaps 300 vessels of war. We have 10,000. Do you understand mathematics?" "We understand perfectly," Chen replied. "Then you will surrender?" "No," Chen said. "We will meet you in battle, 30 days from now, at the coordinates of the Helix Nebula. Our response fleet will be there." A ripple of shock passed through the council. Councillor Varix, an insectoid creature from the Thren Collective, leaned forward in his seat. His multifaceted eyes gleamed with curiosity. "Ambassador Chen," Varix said, his voice like wind through grass, "surely you understand this is suicide. The Xalthari have never lost a war. Their military tradition spans 3,000 years. "Noted," Chen said simply. Kreshtar laughed, a harsh barking sound. "So be it. We will crush you quickly, and then we will take your colonies anyway. Perhaps we will take Earth as well, to teach the galaxy what happens to species who show us disrespect." "Perhaps," Chen said. "Or perhaps you should remember what happened to the last 3 species who underestimated humanity." "Those were minor conflicts," Kreshitar said dismissively. "Border skirmishes with pirates and raiders. This is a real war, human. Prepare your people for extinction." The council session ended soon after. As the representatives filed out, many of them approached the human delegation. Most offered condolences. Some offered asylum for human refugees. A few asked if Earth needed help evacuating its most important cultural artifacts before the invasion. Chen thanked them all politely and revealed nothing. Varix approached her last, after the others had gone. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "I have studied your species. I know your history. You are brave, perhaps foolishly so, but bravery alone will not stop 10,000 warships. Is that all you learned from studying us?" Chen asked. "Just that we're brave?" Varix tilted his head, confused. "What else should I have learned?" "Keep watching," Chen said. "You'll see." The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity had chosen to fight the Xalthari Empire. It was the lead story on every news network. Reporters called it everything from the bravest stand to the shortest war in history. 3 days later, the long-range sensors at the council station detected something. A single ship had departed from Earth orbit, heading toward the Helix Nebula. The sensor operators checked their instruments 3 times, certain there was an error, but there was no error. Humanity had sent exactly 1 ship. The council convened an emergency session. The holographic display now showed 2 images side by side. On the left, the massive Xalthari armada, 10,000 strong. On the right, a single human vessel. "This must be a command ship," someone suggested. "The rest of their fleet will follow." But as the days passed, no other ships appeared. Long-range scans confirmed it, one ship. The database identified it as the UNSC Archimedes, a frigate-class vessel, 800 meters long. In galactic terms, it was tiny. Kreshitar appeared via hologram at another emergency session, laughing so hard his armored plates rattled. The humans send one ship. One, are they surrendering? Is this a diplomatic vessel? Ambassador Chen attended this session as well. She stood at her podium, face expressionless, and said nothing. Ambassador, the council chairman said, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Bulma. Please explain this decision. We are concerned that humanity is committing some form of mass suicide. If your government has fallen to madness, we can offer assistance. Our government is perfectly sane, Chen replied. We are meeting the Zelthari challenge exactly as promised. One fleet arriving at the designated coordinates. But that's one ship, Bulma said gently. Not a fleet, is it? Chen asked. Silence fell over the chamber. Varix felt something strange, a tingling in his antennae that his species associated with the presence of predators. He watched Chen carefully. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes held secrets. What is that ship? Varix asked. The Archimedes, Chen said, named after an ancient Earth mathematician. He once said, give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world. We thought it was an appropriate name. I don't understand human philosophy, Kreshtar said. But I understand weapons. One ship dies easily. We will vaporize it in the first volley. You're welcome to try, Chen said. Over the next 27 days, the galaxy watched and waited. Betting pools opened on various worlds. The odds of human victory were listed at 10,000 to 1. Most bets focused on how long the Archimedes would survive. The average guess was 14 seconds. News ships from a dozen neutral species requested permission to observe the battle. The Zelthari granted it, eager to have witnesses to their glorious victory. Varric spent those days in the council archives, researching everything he could find about human military history. What he found troubled him. Humans had a strange way of fighting wars. They valued surprise over tradition, innovation over honor. They had stories of great victories won by small forces against large ones. They had a concept called asymmetric warfare. They also had a very strange sense of humor about sending apparently inadequate forces into battle. Varric read about wooden horses, about ships that pretended to surrender only to unleash hidden weapons, about soldiers who dressed as civilians and attacked from within. Humans, Varric realized, were very good at making things appear other than what they were. On the 28th day, he sent a message to Ambassador Chen. Whatever the Archimedes truly is, he wrote. I hope it is enough. She replied with 3 words. It's always enough. The galaxy held its breath and waited for the 30th day. The Zelthari fleet gathered at the staging point like a school of metallic fish. Each ship was a work of brutal engineering, designed to intimidate as much as to fight. They ranged from small corvettes to massive dreadnoughts 3 kilometers long. Their hulls were painted in the traditional red and black of the Empire, and their weapons bristled from every surface. Overlord Kreshtar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Fang, and watched the fleet assemble through the viewport. Officers moved efficiently around him, coordinating the arrival of ships from a dozen different battle groups. The display screens showed formation patterns, weapon readiness, and supply lines. All ships have arrived, Overlord, his second-in-command reported. 10,000 vessels, fully armed and crewed. We await your orders, Kreshtar nodded slowly. Set course for the Helix Nebula. Standard battle speed. I want to arrive a full day before the humans so we can choose our position. Yes, Overlord. What about the human ship? What about it? Our long-range sensors are tracking it. Should we intercept before it reaches the nebula? Kreshtar considered this. No, he said finally. We gave them a time and place. We will honor that even if they are fools. Besides, I want the news ships to see this. I want the entire galaxy to watch as we destroy the human vessel with a single volley. The second-in-command hesitated. Overlord, if I may speak freely? Speak. The humans have never been foolish before. They defeated the Corvan raiders. They outmaneuvered the Tekla pirates. Small victories, yes, but clever ones. Why would they send a single ship to face 10,000? Because they have no choice, Kreshitar said. Their fleet is too small and too scattered. This one ship is all they could spare. They send it to save face to show their people that they tried. It changes nothing. But even as he said it, something nagged at the back of his mind. He had read the reports from the previous conflicts. The humans had a reputation for unconventional tactics. They didn't fight like civilized species. They fought to win, tradition and honor be damned. Still, what could one ship do against 10,000? Across the galaxy, in a small news station orbiting the neutral world of Vega Prime, a young reporter named Kayla checked her equipment for the 20th time. She was avian. Her species descended from something like birds with bright blue feathers and large, intelligent eyes. This was her first major assignment, and she was terrified of making a mistake. Her producer, an older male with gray feathers, watched her with amusement. "Kayla, the equipment is fine. Stop fidgeting." "But this is huge," Kayla said, her voice high and musical. "The entire galaxy is watching. What if my camera fails? What if my recorder malfunctions? Then we'll use the backup systems. And the backups. We have 6 redundant systems. Nothing will go wrong. But what if—" "Kayla." The producer put a wing on her shoulder. "You're going to witness history. Either the shortest space battle ever recorded, or something unexpected. Either way, you'll have the story. Just remember to breathe and describe what you see." Kayla nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. She looked at the star charts displayed on her screen. The Helix Nebula was a beautiful region of space, full of colorful gas clouds and new stars being born. It seemed wrong somehow to have a battle there, like spilling blood in a temple. Her ship, along with 15 other news vessels from neutral species, would observe from a safe distance. They had all signed agreements not to interfere, not to broadcast tactical information, and not to approach closer than 100,000 kilometers. The journey to the Helix Nebula would take 12 days at standard cruise speed. Kayla planned to spend that time researching humanity, learning everything she could about the species that would soon be destroyed. What she found surprised her. Humans were young by galactic standards. They had only achieved faster-than-light travel 200 years ago. Most species took thousands of years to develop that technology. Humans had done it in a fraction of the time, spurred by what they called the Resource Wars, a period when their home planet nearly tore itself apart fighting over water and rare metals. That near-death experience had unified them. Unlike most species who remained fractured into competing nations even after achieving space travel, humans had formed a single world government. They called it the United Nations Space Command, and it controlled everything from their military to their colonization efforts. Kayla read about human history before space travel. They had fought wars constantly, millions dying in conflicts over resources, territory, ideology, and religion. But they had also created art, music, literature, and philosophy. They were contradictions, capable of great violence and great beauty. Their military history was particularly interesting. Humans had a concept called combined arms, where different types of forces worked together in complex ways. They had a tradition of deception in warfare, of making the enemy see what wasn't there, and they had dozens of stories about underdogs winning against impossible odds. One story caught her attention. During their ancient naval age, a human force of 300 warriors had held off an army of thousands at a narrow pass. They had all died, but they had bought time for their people to prepare. Humans celebrated this defeat as a great victory of courage over numbers. Another story described a smaller naval force defeating a much larger one through clever tactics and superior positioning. Again and again, Kayla found examples of humans winning fights they should have lost. But those were ancient stories, she reminded herself. This was modern space warfare. Numbers mattered. Technology mattered. One ship could not defeat 10,000 no matter how clever its captain. Could it? On the council station, Varric spent his days buried in research. He had requested every file the council had on humanity, and he read them all. What Ambassador Chen had said haunted him. "Is that all you learned from studying us?" "Just that we're brave." There had been mockery in her voice. Not cruelty, but the kind of mockery used when someone missed an obvious answer. Varric prided himself on his intelligence. His species were natural scholars, processors of information. If he had missed something about humanity, he needed to know what. He created a timeline of human military encounters since joining galactic society. 3 major conflicts, all victories. The Corvin raiders had attacked a human colony with a force of 75 ships. The humans had responded with 30 ships and won decisively. How? By using the planet's moon as cover, and striking from multiple angles simultaneously, coordinating their attacks with precision that shouldn't have been possible. The Tekla pirates had tried to blockade a human trading route with a fleet of 100 ships. The humans had sent 40 ships and broken the blockade in 6 hours. How? By hacking the pirate communications and feeding them false information, causing them to split their forces at exactly the wrong moment. The border dispute with the Nax Collective had nearly gone to war, but human negotiators had somehow convinced the Nax to accept a compromise that everyone agreed favored humanity. How? Varric still didn't understand the details, but it involved something humans called game theory and Nash equilibrium. In every case, humans had won through innovation, coordination, and unconventional thinking. They didn't follow the established rules of galactic warfare. They made up their own rules. But surely there were limits. Surely one ship couldn't hold such secrets. Varric accessed the sensor data from the Archimedes. The ship appeared normal. 800 meters long, standard frigate configuration, fusion reactors providing power, conventional plasma weapons visible on the hull. Crew complement estimated at 200, shield strength rated at Class 5, which was decent but not exceptional. Nothing stood out. Nothing seemed unusual. It was just a ship, and yet, Varric pulled up human language files and ran a search on the name Archimedes. He found references to an ancient human mathematician, just as Ambassador Chen had said. This Archimedes had been famous for inventing machines of war, devices that could lift ships out of water, weapons that could set enemy vessels on fire from a distance. He had been known for finding clever solutions to impossible problems. He had also been famous for a particular phrase about levers and fulcrums and moving worlds. Leverage, Varric thought. Humans understood leverage. They understood how to apply small forces in the right place to achieve large results. But what leverage could one ship provide against 10,000? On the 8th day of the journey, Varric sent a message to several other council members, those he trusted to think clearly. I believe we should prepare medical ships and rescue vessels, he wrote. Position them near the Helix Nebula. Most replied with confusion. For the humans? They asked. What's the point? There will be nothing left to rescue. Perhaps, Varric replied, but prepare the ships anyway. Two agreed. The others dismissed him as paranoid. On the 10th day, the Archimedes crossed into the Helix Nebula region. The Zalthari fleet was already there, spread out in a formation that covered hundreds of kilometers. They were positioned with their backs to a particularly dense region of stellar gas, using it as both protection and backdrop. Any ship approaching them would have to cross open space, completely exposed. The news ships arrived and took up their observation positions. Kayla tested her cameras, her talons trembling with anticipation. In 2 days, the battle would begin. In the council chamber, representatives gathered to watch the live feeds. Most had already written the obituary for humanity. Some had prepared speeches about the tragedy of young species who grew too bold too quickly. Ambassador Chen sat alone in her quarters, not watching any feeds, not reading any messages. She simply waited. On the Archimedes, Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command chair and watched the Zalthari fleet on his displays. He was an older man, 63 standard years, with gray hair cut military short and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had been commanding ships for 30 years. He had never lost one. All systems green, Captain, his tactical officer reported. Weapons ready. Shields at full power. We're receiving the standard surrender demand from the Zalthari flagship. Ignore it, Webb said calmly. Helm, bring us to full stop at the designated coordinates. Maintain position. Yes, sir. Webb studied the enemy formation. It was textbook perfect. Exactly what the Zalthari Military Academy would teach. Strong center, protected flanks, reserves in the rear. No imagination, no flexibility, just tradition and overwhelming force. Perfect. 36 hours until the deadline expires, his executive officer said quietly. Sir, the crew is ready. They know what to do. Webb nodded. Get some rest, Commander. All of you. Tomorrow changes everything. As the crew rotated through their rest periods, Webb remained in his chair, watching the enemy fleet. 10,000 ships. He had faced bad odds before, but never like this. Good thing he hadn't come alone. The Helix Nebula was beautiful in the morning light of the nearby star. Gas clouds glowed in shades of pink and purple, twisted into elegant spirals by magnetic fields and stellar winds. New stars sparkled within the densest regions. Their light filtered through veils of cosmic dust. It was a nursery of creation, where matter gathered and collapsed and ignited into nuclear fusion. It seemed wrong to bring war to such a place. Kayla positioned her camera ship at the designated observation point, exactly 100,000 kilometers from the battle zone. Around her, 14 other news vessels did the same, spreading out to get different angles. Every major network in the galaxy would be broadcasting this live. 3 minutes until the deadline, her producer announced. All systems recording. We're getting 500 million viewers already and the number is climbing. Kayla adjusted her visual sensors, zooming in on the two forces. The Zalthari fleet dominated the view, a massive wall of ships that stretched across her entire display. Each vessel was lit by the nebula's glow, their red and black hulls looking almost demonic in the colorful light. In contrast, the Archimedes looked pathetically small. It hung in space alone, a single gray dart facing an ocean of enemies. Kayla felt a pang of sorrow for the humans aboard. They must know they were about to die. What kind of courage did it take to face death so calmly? On the council station, every representative had gathered in the main chamber. The holographic display showed the same view Kayla was recording. Some species watched in respectful silence. Others couldn't hide their anticipation. A few had already started composing their statements of condolence. Varric sat in his seat, antennae twitching nervously. His emergency rescue ships were positioned just outside the nebula, ready to retrieve survivors. He hoped there would be survivors to retrieve, though he doubted it. Ambassador Chen stood at the human podium, her face expressionless. Varric noticed that her hands clasped behind her back were perfectly steady. Either she had the best composure in the galaxy, or she knew something no one else did. On the bridge of the Crimson Fang, Overlord Kreshtar watched his tactical displays with satisfaction. His fleet was perfectly positioned. Every weapon was charged and ready. His gunners had already calculated firing solutions. The human ship sat in open space completely vulnerable. 1 minute until the deadline, his tactical officer reported. Open a channel to the human ship, Kreshtar ordered. Let me offer them one final chance to surrender. The channel opened. Human vessel Archimedes, this is Overlord Kreshtar of the Zalthari Empire. You have shown courage by appearing here, but courage alone cannot save you. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your crew will be treated as prisoners of war according to Galactic Convention. This is your final opportunity. For a long moment there was only silence. Then a human voice came through the speakers, calm and unhurried. Negative, Overlord. We reject your ultimatum. The United Nations Space Command will not surrender to threats and will not abandon its colonies. Kreshtar recognized the voice from the profile he had reviewed. Captain Marcus Webb, veteran of multiple engagements, decorated officer known for his tactical skill. A formidable commander under normal circumstances. But these were not normal circumstances. You're brave, Captain, but foolish. You face 10,000 ships with one. Even you must see this as hopeless. I see that you've made a mistake, Webb replied. You assumed quantity was the same as quality. You assumed we didn't know what we were doing. You assumed we were afraid. And you're not. Oh, we're afraid, Webb said. Fear is healthy. But fear doesn't control us. We control it. Kreshtar felt a flicker of uncertainty. There was something in the human's voice, not fear, but something else. Certainty? Confidence? It made no sense. You have spirit, Captain. I will remember you after this is over. I will tell stories of the brave human who faced impossible odds without flinching. But now your time is up. Surrender or be destroyed. You have one chance to withdraw, Webb said. This is your only warning. Kreshtar's 4 fists clenched in anger. The audacity of this human. Warning him? Threatening him? With what? Your warning is noted and ignored, Kreshtar said coldly. All ships target the human vessel. Concentrate fire. Destroy them. The Zalthari fleet opened fire as one. 10,000 ships unleashing their weapons simultaneously created a light show that outshone the nebula itself. Plasma bolts, particle beams, kinetic projectiles, and fusion missiles all streaked across space toward the Archimedes. Kayla gasped, nearly dropping her recording controls. The amount of firepower was staggering. It could have cracked a planet. How could any ship survive it? The Archimedes didn't try to evade. It simply sat there, shields flaring to brilliant blue as the first wave of attacks hit. Energy washed over the small ship in waves of destruction. Shields holding, Webb's tactical officer reported. 92%. 88%. 85%. Steady, Webb said calmly. The Zelthari kept firing. Their tactical doctrine called for overwhelming firepower in the opening salvo, breaking enemy shields quickly to deliver killing blows to the hull. Against a single ship, it should have worked in seconds, but the Archimedes shields kept holding. 70%. 60%. 50%. How are their shields so strong? Someone on the Zelthari command channel demanded. Unknown, came the reply. They're using some kind of rotating frequency modulation. Our weapons are having trouble finding resonance. Then increase power. Pour everything into them. The firing intensified. The space around the Archimedes became a solid wall of energy. Kayla's cameras had to dim their sensors to avoid being overwhelmed by the light. 40% shields. 30%. 20%. Sir, the tactical officer said urgently. Shields are failing. Webb leaned forward in his chair, watching his displays with intense focus. He waited. 5%. 3%. 1%. Now, Webb said quietly. Initiate Cascade Protocol. His executive officer pressed a button on her console. Cascade Protocol initiated. Confirmation code received and verified. All units responding. On every news ship, sensor operators suddenly cried out in confusion. On the council station, representatives leaned forward in shock. On the Crimson Fang, Kreshtar's eyes widened in disbelief. The Archimedes began to change. At first, it looked like the ship was breaking apart under the assault. Sections of the hull seemed to separate, drifting away from the main body. But they weren't drifting randomly. They were moving with purpose, with coordination. Each section that detached immediately activated its own shields. Each section began to accelerate on its own power. Each section was itself a complete ship. What is that? Kreshtar roared. His tactical officer's voice shook. Overlord, the human vessel was not one ship. It was multiple ships locked together. They're separating now. I'm counting 10 ships, 20, 50, 100. The Archimedes unfolded like a flower blooming in fast motion. The central core split into segments, and each segment split again and again. Ships that had been compressed together, powered down and magnetically locked, now activated and spread out across the battlefield. 200 ships, the tactical officer said, his voice rising. 400. 600. The transformation continued. Each new ship that separated revealed more ships behind it, nested together like Russian dolls. They spread out in perfect formation, moving with a coordination that suggested quantum-entangled communication systems. 1,000 ships, the tactical officer whispered. Captain Webb stood on the bridge of what had been the Archimedes, but was now designated as the command ship Leonidas. Around him, his crew worked with practiced efficiency, managing data feeds from the entire fleet. All ships report ready, his executive officer said. Formation complete. All weapons hot. All targeting solutions locked. Webb looked at his tactical display. The Zelthari fleet was in complete disarray. They had positioned themselves for an overwhelming attack on a single target. Their ships were packed close together for maximum firepower concentration, their flanks exposed because they thought they didn't need protection. The human fleet now surrounded them in a perfect sphere. Attention Zelthari fleet, Webb broadcast. You are completely surrounded. Your formation is compromised. You have one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted to neutral space. On the Crimson Fang, Kreshtar stared at his displays in shock. The tactical situation had reversed completely in less than a minute. His fleet, designed to deliver overwhelming offense, was now trapped in a formation that made defense nearly impossible. If they tried to turn to engage the human ships, they would collide with each other. If they tried to spread out, they would present even better targets. How? He said numbly. How is this possible? His chief engineer pulled up sensor data, his hands shaking. Overlord, the human ships were all powered down to minimal levels. They used magnetic clamps to lock together in a compact formation. Our sensors read them as a single ship, because they were barely generating any energy signature. The moment they activated, they were already in perfect position. But the engineering required to do this is beyond anything we've seen, the engineer finished. Each ship has independent power, weapons, and navigation, but they coordinate as if they were one entity. The level of computer integration alone should be impossible. Kreshtar looked at the display showing the human fleet. 1,000 ships, each one bristling with weapons, each one positioned perfectly to cover every angle of attack. His 10,000 ships suddenly didn't seem like enough. "Signal the fleet," he said quietly. "All ships are to—" "Wait," his tactical officer interrupted. "Overlord, I'm detecting weapons charging on the human ships. Advanced weapons. I'm reading railguns with gravitational acceleration, plasma lances with magnetic containment beyond our specifications, and something else. Some kind of quantum disruptor. I don't even know what that does." Kreshitar understood in that moment that he had made a terrible mistake. He had underestimated the humans. He had assumed their youth meant weakness. He had assumed their small fleet meant they were unprepared for war. But the humans hadn't sent one ship because they were weak. They had sent one ship because one was all they needed. "All ships," Kreshitar said, his voice heavy with defeat. "Ceasefire. Power down weapons. We surrender." Across the Zalthari fleet, ships went dark one by one, their weapons systems shutting down. Some commanders protested, demanding to fight. But most understood what their overlord had realized. They had already lost. Webb watched the enemy fleet power down and allowed himself a small smile. "Maintain weapons lock," he ordered. "But do not fire unless fired upon. Commence rescue operations for any damaged vessels. Medical teams stand by to assist with Zalthari casualties." His executive officer looked at him with pride. "Sir, we did it." "We did," Webb agreed. "Now comes the hard part. Winning the peace." In the council chamber, there was absolute silence. Every representative stared at the holographic display, watching the human fleet maintain perfect formation around the surrendered Zalthari forces. Ambassador Chen allowed herself a small smile. "Any questions?" she asked the chamber. No one answered. They were all too shocked to speak. Ferrix felt his antennae tingling again, that predator sense. But this time he understood it. Humans were predators. Not in the physical sense, though they were that too. They were predators of expectations. They hunted assumptions and killed them with reality. Kayla's recording was going viral across the galaxy. Her viewer count had reached 2 billion and climbing. Her voice, shocked and trembling, narrated what everyone had seen but no one had believed. Humanity had sent one ship, and it had been enough. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the human fleet maintained its perfect sphere around the Zalthari forces. On 1,000 different worlds in 1,000 different languages, the same questions were being asked. How? When? Why didn't we know? On the council station, technical analysts were already pulling apart every piece of sensor data they could find. How had humanity hidden an entire fleet inside what looked like a single ship? The engineering challenges alone should have been impossible. Counselor Varick stood at a terminal in the analysis lab, reviewing the data himself. He had called in every favor he could to get access to this information. As the numbers appeared on his screen, his antennae drooped in disbelief. "This doesn't make sense," the Thren analyst next to him muttered. She was one of the best engineers in the galaxy, but even she looked confused. The power requirements to compress a fleet like this should be enormous, and the magnetic containment systems needed to hold the ships together without them interfering with each other's systems. "Show me the power readings," Varick said. She pulled up the data. That's the strange part. When the Archimedes appeared to be a single ship, its power signature was consistent with a normal frigate. Not elevated, not unusual, just normal. So they were running on minimal power? They must have been. Each individual ship was probably in a hibernation state, using only life support and basic systems. The moment they activated, their combined power signature jumped by a factor of 1,000. She paused. Actually, that's not quite right. It jumped by more than 1,000. These ships are generating more power per unit than our standard vessels. Varick studied the data. What about the weapons? Even more advanced. Look at these readings from their railguns. They're using gravitational lensing to accelerate the projectiles beyond what should be physically possible, and their plasma lances have a coherence length 3 times better than ours. We can't even build plasma containment that stable. And the quantum disruptors? The analyst made a gesture of helplessness. I don't even know what those do. The theory behind quantum disruption has been understood for centuries, but no one has ever successfully weaponized it. The power requirements are too high, and the targeting systems would need to be accurate to within a fraction of a nanometer. It's theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Except humans did it, Varick said quietly. Except humans did it, she agreed. In the Helix Nebula, Captain Webb was conducting the most unusual operation of his career. His fleet maintained weapons lock on the Zalthari ships, but instead of pressing their advantage, human crews were launching rescue operations. 3 Zalthari vessels had sustained damage from their own allies' weapons fire during the chaotic moments of the battle. Nothing critical, but enough to compromise life support in some sections. Human medical shuttles were approaching these ships offering assistance. At first, the Zalthari refused. Pride and shame warred within them. They had just been humiliated and now their enemies wanted to help them. But humans could be very persuasive. When a Zalthari frigate lost power to its medical bay, killing the artificial gravity and life support for 50 injured crew members, a human medical team didn't ask permission. They simply docked, cut through the airlock, and started treating patients. The Zalthari medical officer on duty tried to protest. "We don't need your help, human." The human doctor, a woman named Sarah Kamani, simply looked at him with calm brown eyes. "You're injured, need help. We have the supplies and expertise. You can hate us later. Right now, let us save lives." The Zalthari officer stepped aside. Within an hour, all 50 injured crew members had been stabilized. The human medical team left behind supplies and instructions, then departed to help the next ship. They didn't ask for thanks. They didn't gloat about the battle. They just worked. On the Crimson Fang, Overlord Kreshtar sat in his command chair and watched the humans work. His second-in-command stood beside him, equally quiet. "They could have destroyed us," the second-in-command said finally. "We were completely trapped. One volley from that many ships with weapons that advanced and our fleet would have been crippled." "I know," Kreshtar said. "But they didn't fire. They offered surrender instead." "I know. Why?" Kreshtar thought about this. "In Zalthari military tradition, you destroyed your enemies utterly. You showed no mercy because mercy was weakness. The strong dominated and the weak served or died. It was the way things had always been, but humans operated under different rules. Because they wanted to make a point." Kreshtar said slowly, "If they had destroyed us, we would have been victims. Other species might have sympathized with us. They might have feared humans as aggressors. But by accepting our surrender and helping our wounded, they show strength and restraint. They show they could have destroyed us but chose not to. That's much more frightening than simple destruction," his second-in-command observed. "Yes," Kreshtar agreed. "Yes, it is." A communication request came through from the human command ship. Kreshtar accepted it. Captain Webb's face appeared on the display, professional and calm. "Overlord Kreshtar," Webb said, "we need to discuss the terms of your withdrawal from this region." "We are at your mercy, Captain," Kreshtar replied, keeping his voice level. "State your terms. First, your fleet will be escorted to neutral space by elements of our fleet. During this transit, you will make no aggressive moves. Any ship that breaks from formation or powers up weapons will be disabled." "Understood." "Second, all of your wounded will receive medical treatment from our doctors, if you allow it. We have supplies we can transfer to your ships." Kreshtar blinked in surprise. "You're offering us supplies?" "Yes. Medical supplies, food concentrates, and spare parts for your damaged vessels. We're not trying to be generous, Overlord. We're being practical. The journey back to Zalthari space will take 2 weeks. I'd prefer your people arrive alive and healthy." "I see." Kreshtar paused. "What else?" "Third, this incident will be reported to the Galactic Council as an attempted invasion that was repelled through superior tactics and technology. We will not demand reparations or territory. We will not seek revenge. We will simply return to our colonies and continue our operations as before." "That's all? No punishment? No tribute?" Webb's expression became serious. "Overlord, we didn't come here to punish you. We came to protect our people. You threatened our colonies. We responded with overwhelming force. Now that you understand we can defend ourselves, I hope we won't need to do this again." "You won't," Kreshtar said quietly. "You have my word on that." "Good, then we'll begin the escort operation in 6 hours. That should give everyone time to make repairs and prepare for the journey." The communication ended. Kreshtar sat back in his chair, trying to process what had just happened. The humans had won the battle completely. They could dictate any terms they wanted. They could demand his fleet surrender their weapons or their ships, or even his own resignation in disgrace. Instead, they offered medical supplies and safe escort home. What kind of species were these humans? On the news ship, Kayla was conducting interviews with anyone who would talk to her. She had already spoken to Zalthari crew members who had been treated by human doctors. recording their confusion and grudging respect. Now she was trying to get comments from the human fleet. To her surprise, Captain Webb agreed to a brief interview. His face appeared on her screen, tired but satisfied. "Captain Webb," Kayla said, trying to keep her voice professional despite her excitement. "The entire galaxy is asking the same question. How did you do it? How did humanity hide an entire fleet inside one ship?" Webb smiled slightly. "With very good engineers and very patient crews. The technical details are classified, but I can tell you the basic principle. We designed modular ships that could lock together in a compact formation. When powered down and magnetically connected, they read as a single vessel to most sensor systems. But why? Why develop this technology? Because we're young and we're small," Webb said simply. "We have 300 ships total in our fleet. Most major powers have thousands. We couldn't match the galaxy in numbers, so we had to be smarter. We had to make each ship count for more. And the weapons? Our analysts are saying your technology is decades ahead of current galactic standards." Webb's smile faded. "That's not quite accurate. The technology has always been possible. The theories were all known. We just applied them in ways no one else had tried. Sometimes being new to something is an advantage. We don't have traditions telling us what can't be done." "Some species are calling this a Trojan horse strategy," Kyla said, "a reference to ancient human military deception. Is that accurate?" "It's not inaccurate," Webb admitted. "Humans have a long history of using deception in warfare. But this wasn't about trickery. This was about efficiency. We genuinely sent one unit. It just happened to be a unit composed of many ships. What message do you want to send to the galaxy with this victory?" Webb looked directly into the camera. "That humanity is not weak. That youth does not mean ignorance. And that we prefer peace but are very, very good at war. We hope other species will remember that before they threaten us." The interview ended, but Kayla knew that last statement would be repeated across the galaxy for years to come. In the council chamber, Ambassador Chen was facing a barrage of questions from other representatives. Some were angry, claiming humanity had deceived the council by hiding their true military capabilities. Others were simply confused, trying to understand the implications of what they had witnessed. "Ambassador Chen," Bulma said, his jellyfish form pulsing with agitation, "you must understand our concern. If humanity can hide a fleet this way, what else are you hiding? What other capabilities do you have that we don't know about?" Chen looked around the chamber calmly. "With respect, Chairman, that's not the right question. The right question is why you assumed you knew everything about us in the first place." "What do you mean? Humanity has been part of the Galactic Council for 200 years. In that time, how many of you have actually studied our culture, our history, our way of thinking? How many of you made assumptions based on our age and our size without looking deeper?" Silence fell across the chamber. Chen continued, her voice gentle but firm. "We're young, yes. We're small, yes. But we're also innovative, adaptable, and determined. We spent thousands of years fighting wars on our own planet before we ever reached space. We learned lessons about strategy, technology, and survival that most species never had to learn because they achieved space travel during peaceful eras of their development." "Are you saying your violent history makes you superior?" Someone asked, offended. "No," Chen said. "I'm saying our violent history taught us things. Good things and bad things. One of the good things is that we learned to win wars with the resources we had. Not the resources we wished we had. We learned to be creative. We learned that rules are often just habits, and habits can be changed." Varric spoke up from his seat. "Ambassador, how many of these combined fleet vessels does humanity possess?" Chen looked at him for a long moment before answering. "Enough." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I'm authorized to give," Chen replied. "But I will say this. We have enough to defend our territory. We have enough to discourage aggression. And we have enough to make any species think twice before threatening human colonies." "Is that a threat?" Kreshtar's representative asked. The Overlord himself was still in the Helix Nebula, but he had sent a junior officer to speak for the Zalthari Empire. "No," Chen said. "It's a fact. We don't threaten. We prepare." There's a difference. The session continued for several more hours, but the message was clear. Humanity was no longer going to be seen as a minor species, young and weak and easily pushed around. They had proven they had teeth, and they weren't afraid to show them. But they had also proven something else, something perhaps more important. They had shown mercy and victory. They had offered help to their defeated enemies. They had followed the rules of galactic warfare even when they could have ignored them. Humanity was dangerous, yes, but they were also honorable. It was a combination that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. 2 weeks after the Battle of Helix Nebula, as historians were already calling it, the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. Every news network was running analysis programs. Every military academy was revising its tactical doctrine. Every intelligence agency was frantically trying to determine what else humanity might be hiding. On the council station, Councillor Varix had requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen. She agreed, and now they sat together in a quiet observation lounge, watching ships come and go through the station's traffic lanes. "I've been thinking about what you said," Varix began, "about how we made assumptions without really studying your species." Chen sipped her tea, a human beverage that smelled of flowers and earth. "And what have you concluded?" "That you were right. We saw what we expected to see. Young species, small fleet, primitive technology. We didn't look deeper because we thought we didn't need to." Varix's antennae twitched with embarrassment. "I pride myself on being a scholar, but I failed the most basic test of scholarship. I didn't question my assumptions." "You're being too hard on yourself," Chen said. "You were the one who warned others something was unusual. You prepared rescue ships. You were the only one who took us seriously. But not seriously enough. I thought you might have some clever tactic, some unexpected strategy. I never imagined anything like what actually happened," Chen smiled. "To be fair, very few people did. That was rather the point. How long have you had this technology? The modular fleet concept?" "About 70 years. The first prototype was a disaster. Ships wouldn't stay locked together. Power systems interfered with each other and the magnetic clamps kept failing at critical moments. It took decades to get it right." 70 years, Varix repeated. "You've been developing this in secret for 70 years? "Not secret exactly. We published papers on modular ship design. We discussed the theoretical possibilities at engineering conferences. But no one paid attention because we were just humans. And what could we possibly teach species that had been building ships for thousands of years?" Varix felt shame color his thoughts. She was right, of course. Human technical papers were rarely cited by other species researchers. The assumption was that humans, being new to space, couldn't possibly have insights that older species had missed. "How many of these combined fleet vessels do you actually have?" Varix asked. Chen laughed. "You're not the first to ask that question this week. The answer is still the same. Enough. But surely you can tell me. I'm not going to sell the information to your enemies." "The problem isn't trust," Chen explained. "The problem is strategy. Right now, every military in the galaxy is trying to figure out our capabilities. They know we have at least one combined fleet vessel. They assume we have more, but they don't know how many more. That uncertainty is valuable. It makes potential enemies cautious, so you're bluffing?" "Am I?" Chen asked with a slight smile. "Or am I telling the truth and just being vague about the details? That's the question everyone has to ask themselves." Varix understood the game she was playing. Uncertainty could be as effective as actual strength. Maybe humanity had a dozen such vessels. Maybe they had 100. No one knew. So everyone had to assume the worst. "You've changed the balance of power in the galaxy," Varix said. "You know that, don't you?" "We've adjusted it," Chen corrected. "We haven't changed it. The major powers still have their massive fleets. The old alliances still hold. We've just made it clear that humanity won't be pushed around anymore." "The Zalthari are already suing for a formal peace treaty," Varix said. "They want to establish trade relations and mutual defense agreements. 6 other species have approached your delegation about similar arrangements." "I know. We're reviewing all the proposals carefully. And the Galactic Council is preparing to offer humanity a permanent seat on the Security Committee." Chen's eyebrows rose. "That's interesting. We weren't expecting that. You've proven you belong there. Any species that can defeat the Zalthari deserves a voice in galactic security matters." Varix paused. "There's also a proposal to make human military training available to other species. Several governments want to learn your tactics." "We're considering it," Chen said. "Though I suspect what works for humans might not work for everyone else. Our approach to warfare is shaped by our history and psychology. Other species have different strengths. Down in the Helix Nebula, now completely empty of military vessels, Kayla was recording a follow-up documentary. She floated in her observation ship, cameras pointed at the colorful gas clouds that had witnessed the brief battle. It's been 2 weeks since the Battle of Helix Nebula, she narrated, and the galaxy is still processing what happened here. In less than 5 minutes, humanity demonstrated that youth does not mean weakness, and that innovation can overcome tradition. She pulled up footage from the battle, showing the Archimedes transforming from one ship into 1,000. Even after seeing it dozens of times, it still took her breath away. Military analysts have been studying every second of this footage. They've identified at least 40 different tactical innovations that humanity employed. The modular ship design is the most obvious, but there's also the quantum entangled communication system that allowed perfect coordination, the rotating shield frequencies that resisted the initial bombardment, and weapon systems that are reportedly decades ahead of current galactic technology. Kayla paused, choosing her next words carefully. But perhaps the most important lesson from this battle isn't about technology or tactics. It's about assumptions. The galaxy assumed humanity was weak because they were young. The Zalthari assumed they would win because they had superior numbers. Both assumptions were wrong. She pulled up an interview clip with a Zalthari officer who had been treated by human doctors. "They saved my life," the officer said in the recording, still looking confused about it. "We had just tried to destroy them, and they saved my life. I don't understand these humans." "That's the question everyone is asking," Kayla continued. "What kind of species are humans? They're warriors capable of incredible violence, yet they show mercy to defeated enemies. They're innovative enough to revolutionize space combat, yet they prefer peace. They're young by galactic standards, yet they teach old lessons in new ways." She ended the recording and prepared to transmit it to her network. This documentary would be watched by billions, she knew. Everyone wanted to understand humanity better now. They just weren't sure they ever would. In Earth orbit at the main shipyard complex, Captain Marcus Webb was giving a tour to a small group of journalists and analysts. They walked through the construction bays, watching robots and human workers assemble the next generation of ships. "This is Shipyard 7, Webb explained. "We have 12 main yards in Sol system, plus smaller facilities in the outer colonies." One of the analysts, a serpentine creature from the Seth Collective, hissed softly, "Captain, I count at least 30 vessels under construction here. Are all of these combined fleet vessels?" Webb smiled. Some are conventional designs. We're maintaining a mixed fleet because different missions require different tools." "How many ships can dock together in your largest combined fleet configuration?" another journalist asked. "That's classified," Webb replied. "But I can tell you that the Archimedes-class vessels you saw at Helix Nebula are not our largest designs." That caused a stir among the group. "Not the largest? What could be larger than a vessel that contained 1,000 ships? Are you trying to intimidate the galaxy, Captain?" the Seth analyst asked. "No," Webb said seriously. "We're trying to protect our people. There's a difference. We don't want to conquer anyone. We don't want to dominate anyone. We just want to be left alone, to live our lives and grow our civilization. But you're building a massive military fleet. Because history taught us what happens to peaceful civilizations that don't prepare for war," Webb replied. "They get conquered by civilizations that do. We prefer peace, but we won't be victims." He led them to an observation window overlooking the construction bays. In the distance, they could see a massive structure taking shape, easily 5 times the size of the Archimedes configuration. "What is that?" someone asked in awe. "That," Webb said, "is our insurance policy. We call it the Midway Project, named after an ancient naval battle where a smaller force defeated a larger one through superior intelligence and timing." "When will it be completed?" "Within the year, and we have 3 more under construction at other facilities." The journalists and analysts exchanged worried glances. If the Archimedes had carried 1,000 ships, how many could that monster carry? Webb saw their concern and softened his tone. "Look, I understand this is frightening. Watching a new power emerge is always unsettling. But I want to be very clear about something. Humanity doesn't want war. We've seen enough war in our own history to last 1,000 lifetimes. We build these ships because we have to, not because we want to." "Then why show them to us?" the Seth analyst asked. "Why not keep your capabilities secret?" "Because secrets breed suspicion, and suspicion breeds conflict," Webb explained. "We'd rather be honest about our strength. Yes, we have advanced technology. Yes, we have formidable military capabilities. But we're also committed to galactic law, to diplomatic solutions, and to peaceful coexistence with other species." You're trying to deter aggression without seeming aggressive yourselves, the analyst observed. Exactly. It's a difficult balance, but we think it's the right approach. The tour continued for another hour, though Webb was careful not to reveal too much. By the time it ended, the journalist had enough material for dozens of stories, and the analyst had enough data to fuel years of study. Back in the council chamber, a formal session was underway. The topic was humanity's application for a permanent seat on the Security Committee. Ambassador Chen stood at the human podium waiting for the vote. Bulma, the council chairman, floated at the center of the chamber. The motion before us is to grant the United Nations Space Command a permanent seat on the Galactic Security Committee, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. This is a significant decision. A permanent seat has not been granted to a new species in over 200 years. The humans have earned it, someone said. Chen recognized the voice as belonging to a representative from the Tekla Confederation, the same species whose pirates had once threatened human trade routes. They've proven they can defend not just themselves but others. They've shown restraint and victory. They follow galactic law. They deserve a seat at the table. They're too young, another voice objected. Too unpredictable. They've been in space for barely 2 centuries. How can we trust them with security decisions that affect the entire galaxy? Varix rose from his seat. With respect, age is not the same as wisdom. Humanity has demonstrated more strategic insight in 2 centuries than some species have shown in 2 millennia. I vote yes. The debate continued for an hour, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Battle of Helix Nebula had changed everything. When the vote was finally called, it passed with 73% approval. Chen bowed formally to the chamber. The United Nations Space Command accepts this honor with humility and dedication. We will serve the galaxy's interests faithfully. As the session ended and representatives filed out, Chen remained at her podium for a moment, looking around the empty chamber. She thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 200 years of careful diplomacy, of proving themselves reliable, of showing they could be both strong and peaceful. She thought about the young species who would come after humanity, who would face the same challenges of being new and small and underestimated. Maybe humanity's example would make things easier for them. Maybe it would show that youth could be an advantage, that innovation mattered more than tradition, and that respect was earned through actions, not age. Her assistant approached quietly. Ambassador, Captain Webb is requesting a secure communication. Put him through. Webb's face appeared on her tablet screen. Ambassador, I thought you'd want to know. We just received word that the Zalthari Empire has formally requested a state visit to Earth. Overlord Kreshitar himself wants to come. Chen raised her eyebrows. That's unexpected. What does he want? According to the message, he wants to understand us better. He says he made the mistake of underestimating us once, and he doesn't intend to make that mistake again. Smart man, Chen said. What do you think? I think it's an opportunity, Webb replied. The Zalthari are one of the major powers. If we can turn them from enemies into allies, it changes the entire political landscape. Agreed. I'll forward the request to the Security Council with a recommendation for approval. Chen paused. Marcus, do you ever worry that we're moving too fast? That we're taking on too much responsibility? Webb considered the question carefully. Sometimes, he admitted. But then I remember why we do this. Every colony we protect, every diplomatic success we achieve, every war we prevent, those are real people whose lives get better. That's worth the stress. You're right. Thank you for the reminder. The communication ended and Chen gathered her materials. She had another meeting in an hour, this time with representatives from 3 species who wanted to discuss trade agreements. Then a security briefing. Then a dinner with the Thren Diplomatic Corps. The work never ended. But as she walked through the corridors of the council station, she passed windows that showed Earth hanging in the distance, a blue and white marble against the black. Home. Worth protecting. Worth fighting for. Humanity had come a long way from that violent, resource-scarce planet. They had reached for the stars and found their place among them. Not through conquest or domination, but through innovation, determination, and the courage to be different. They had sent one ship to face an armada because one ship was all they needed. But that wasn't quite true, Chen reflected. They had sent one ship because they knew it would be enough. They had prepared, planned, and built toward this moment for decades. When the test came, they were ready, and they would be ready for whatever came next. Somewhere in deep space, in a classified shipyard hidden among the asteroids of the Kuiper Belt, construction continued on vessels that would make the Midway look small. Humanity's engineers worked tirelessly, always innovating, always improving, always preparing, because humans had learned the hardest lesson of all. Peace was precious and worth fighting for, but the only way to preserve peace was to be strong enough that no one dared threaten it. They wondered why humans sent just one vessel. Now the galaxy knew, and they would never underestimate humanity again.